Okay, today we are grabbing probably the sneakiest, most pervasive happiness thief out there in the modern world. We're going to try and pin it down and really unpack how it works.
Yeah, it's this thing that makes even really successful people feel like somehow they're just not measuring up.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to get under the hood, understand the psychology that makes us feel perpetually, well, insufficient. We are talking about comparison.
It really is the great modern paradox, isn't it? I mean, objectively, so many of us have levels of comfort, opportunity, stuff previous generations couldn't even dream of.
Right.
And yet this chronic kind of low-grade anxiety about our own worth, it's just skyrocketing.
And you're saying that anxiety, it's pretty much entirely rooted in comparison.
Mostly, yeah. But it's comparison that's been put on steroids, amplified like crazy, almost weaponized, you could say, by the digital world we all swim in now.
Okay, again, let's unpack that. So we're talking about that quiet little whisper and that feeling of inadequacy that just creeps up on you, usually when you least expect it. You're just, trying to live your life, maybe having a quiet morning coffee, winding down after a tough day, and then you pick up your phone, you open an app.
And bam, there it is. Not real life, but this distilled, perfected highlight reel of everyone else's existence.
Highlight reel is a good way to put it. It's not just a photo. It's like a mini movie trailer for a perfect life.
Exactly. It's curated, it's a narrative, and it's specifically designed, consciously or not, to showcase perfection, or at least the appearance of it.
Yeah. So you're scrolling, right? And suddenly there's that absolutely flawless vacation picture. Maybe it's an acquaintance. They're on some beach in the Maldives, looking tanned, blissful. The lighting's perfect, filters on point.
Perfect moment, captured forever. Or maybe it's not a picture. Maybe you see the news, that headline about an old classmate.
Oh, yeah.
Someone you knew from college. Maybe someone you honestly thought wasn't quite as driven as you back then. And now their company's expanding like crazy. They just landed this massive funding round. Life-changing money.
Or it's those videos, right? The endless stream of filtered videos. Influencers showing off a quote-unquote perfect body or a home that looks like a magazine spread.
Yeah, or some super demanding wellness routine that just seems utterly impossible with, a real job and family commitments.
And these aren't just images or updates, are they? You called them psychological triggers.
That's what they function as.
Yeah.
Because the immediate internal reaction, it's almost never pure, simple happiness for them, is it?
No, rarely.
Yeah.
It's that little insidious question that just pops into your head, uninvited, it's quick, and it feels kind of corrosive. Why am I not there? Why is my life so boring or messy or just ordinary? What am I doing wrong? What secret thing do they have that I don't?
And that feeling, that core anxiety, that's what we're diving deep into today.
Because this isn't just like a personal failing, is it? It's almost universal now.
It is. And the reason it's so widespread is that it plugs directly into a really fundamental, quite old principle from social psychology. We're talking about social comparison theory. And the science here is pretty clear. That basic human instinct we have to compare ourselves, when you funnel it through the sort of one-sided, heavily filtered lens of social media and digital platforms, it almost inevitably leads to chronic unhappiness. It sets up a race you just can't win.
Right, an unwinnable race.
Yeah.
That sets the stage perfectly. So let's rewind a bit. Because this urge, this comparison thing, it didn't just appear with the smartphone, right?
Oh, not at all. No, this drive to measure ourselves up against others, it has really deep evolutionary roots. To understand it properly, we actually need to go back, way back to 1954.
Okay, 1954. What happened then?
That's when the psychologist Leon Festinger first really laid out this theory. He proposed that we humans, we have this fundamental basic drive, almost like an innate need to compare ourselves with other people.
Okay, but why? Why would evolution wire us up like that? Surely the original purpose wasn't just to make us feel bad about our lives.
No, the original purpose was much more practical. It was about calibration and, frankly, survival, not about generating misery.
Calibration, how so?
Well, the goal of comparison originally was to get an accurate read on your own abilities and also to check the accuracy of your opinions. Think about it in like an ancestral tribe setting.
Okay.
If you're part of a hunting party, you kind of need to know, objectively, are you strong enough, fast enough? Compared to the best hunters, where do you stand? Are you an asset or a liability?
Right, you need to know your role, your capabilities relative to the group.
Exactly. Or say you think a certain path through the forest is safe for foraging, but everyone else in your community avoids it like the plague. Comparing opinions, checking your perspective against the group consensus, that could literally save your life. It helps correct potential errors in your own judgment.
So comparison back then was really a tool for self-assessment, for figuring out reality when maybe the physical evidence alone wasn't enough. It helped define your place, contribute effectively, ensure survival within that community structure.
Precisely. It was a calibration tool. And Festinger, he was really careful to break down the direction of these comparisons. And this is where it gets super relevant to our modern problems. He identified two main directions.
Okay, let's tackle the one that seems to cause the most trouble today. Upward social comparison.
Right. Upward social comparison. That's when you compare yourself to people you perceive as being, well, superior in some way that matters to you. They seem better off, wealthier, more successful, maybe just happier than you are.
Setting a benchmark against someone perceived as better.
Yes. The classic examples might be looking up to a Nobel laureate in your field, or a super successful entrepreneur, or even just someone you know who seems incredibly emotionally mature and balanced. You aspire to be like them.
So that sounds potentially positive, like inspiration.
And it can be. This is really crucial. Upward comparison has this dual potential impact. In a more traditional, maybe localized context, seeing someone achieve something great could be incredibly motivating.
How so?
It shows you what's possible. The thought process might be, wow, they did that through hard work and smart choices. I can learn from that. I can aim for that too. It sets a new, potentially attainable benchmark.
But, and there's always a but.
Yeah.
You're saying that in today's digital world, that positive motivational aspect often gets short-circuited, completely bypassed.
Often, yes. The key factor, the pivot point, seems to be perceived attainability.
Oh, okay. So whether you believe you can actually reach that higher level.
Exactly. If you look at someone above you and you perceive the gap as bridgeable, maybe you believe their success came from effort, strategy, skills you could potentially develop, then the comparison can be healthy. It inspires you to emulate them, to strive.
But what if the gap looks huge?
Yeah.
Like impossibly wide? Or if their success seems totally effortless, almost magical? Which, let's be honest, is often how social media makes things look.
Then the motivation just evaporates. It vanishes. That's the switch. That's when it turns toxic.
Right.
When that benchmark feels fundamentally out of reach, or when you don't see the context, you see the glamorous outcome, but not the decades of grinding, failure, and stress that went into it, then the internal script flips.
From I could do that too,
to something much more corrosive, like I will never reach that level. There must be something fundamentally wrong with me. And that just breeds envy, shame, feeling stuck, inadequacy.
Okay, so if upward comparison is constantly knocking our self-esteem down in this digital age, our minds must be scrambling for some kind of relief, right? Which I guess brings us to the second type of Festinger talked about.
Yes, downward social comparison. This is often a more subconscious move, kind of a strategic retreat by the ego. It's when you compare yourself to people you perceive as being in a worse situation than you are.
Worse off financially, maybe, or professionally, or in their personal lives.
Correct. Maybe they're facing greater challenges, have fewer resources, are less healthy.
That feels a bit uncomfortable to admit we do that. But what's the psychological payoff? Why do we do it?
The immediate payoff is usually a quick but very temporary boost in self-confidence or relief. The mind kind of throws out a quick statement like, okay, things might be tough for me, but hey, at least I'm not dealing with that. It functions as a sort of coping mechanism, especially when we're feeling particularly threatened or down about our own situation. A quick hit of validation.
I can see how that might work as a sort of emergency brake to stop a complete downward spiral of feeling inadequate.
Yeah.
But relying on that for your self-worth, that sounds like building your house on sand.
It absolutely is. In the long run, it's psychologically, well, bankrupting is maybe too strong, but it's not healthy. Because your sense of okayness becomes external and conditional on someone else being worse off.
Right. It doesn't actually build real sustainable self-esteem.
No, that has to come from internal stuff, competence, values, effort. Plus, while it might give that temporary relief, constantly focusing on the misfortunes of others isn't great either. It can kind of breed callousness or maybe just distract you from tackling the actual problems in your own life.
Okay, so let me try and synthesize this. Historically, comparison was this evolved tool. We use both directions. Upward, sometimes for motivation, and downward, sometimes to cope or feel grateful. And the goal was to accurately calibrate ourselves within our actual local community.
That's a great summary. Our ancestors likely used both, probably in a much more balanced way, to maintain a sense of stability and figure out where they fit. But the huge shift today, largely thanks to these digital platforms, is that we're almost exclusively and automatically engaging in hyper-upward comparison.
Hyper-upward.
Yeah, comparing ourselves not just to the successful person next door, but to the global 0.1%.
Yeah.
And critically, it's intensely filtered comparison. We're seeing endless curated perfection, completely stripped of the realistic local context that used to help us calibrate properly.
And that's the loop. That constant filtered upward gaze is what traps us, keeps us feeling like we're never quite enough.
Precisely. It's a system almost designed for inadequacy.
Wow. Okay, that foundational understanding is crucial. But now we need to get into the specifics of how the digital age didn't just make comparison easier, but how it actively weaponized it, how it created this perfect psychological trap.
Yes, it took that natural evolutionary drive and basically hotwired it into an engine for dissatisfaction. And the way it works so effectively is because social media empowers, even encourages every single user to construct what we can call the showcase life.
The showcase life. Define that for us. Is it just, pretending to be happy online?
It's more than just pretending. A showcase life is the heavily edited, meticulously curated, optimized version of a person's existence that gets presented publicly. We aren't seeing genuine, messy, complex lives in real time. We're seeing marketing campaigns for those lives.
Marketing campaigns, wow.
And like any good marketing campaign, it overwhelmingly sells only the positive attributes: success, happiness, effortless beauty, travel, abundance. Flaws, struggles, boredom, they get edited out.
Which leads us right into what we're calling the 1% rule. This feels like the absolute core mechanic of the trap. We need to be super clear for everyone listening about what they're actually seeing versus what they're actually living.
Yes. The psychological distortion here is profound and mostly unconscious. We need to actively take inventory of the missing 99%. Think about the reality of your life, the parts you don't post.
Right.
Nobody shares the tense, exhausting argument they had with their partner last night, or the credit card bill that's keeping them awake, or the presentation at work that totally bombed, or just, the bad hair day or the morning they felt cripplingly anxious for no reason. That's the 99%.
Exactly. They post the peak moments. The vacation that probably took 6 months of stressful saving and maybe involved a delayed flight and lost luggage. The big career win that came after 5 years of relentless, unglamorous grind. The high dinner party that was followed by 2 hours of scrubbing pans. These are the 1% perfect filtered peak moments. That's what's visible.
And here is the absolute crux of the psychological mismatch, the thing that causes the pain. We are constantly, relentlessly comparing our own 100% genuine, ordinary, up-and-down reality, which includes the messy kitchen, the money worries, the boredom, the self-doubt, all of it.
Our full, unedited director's cut.
Yes. We compare that to everyone else's 1% perfected highlights reel. We intimately know our own 100% warts and all, but we only ever see their curated 1%.
And when you put those two fundamentally different things side by side, your real 100% life inevitably starts to look deeply flawed, deficient even.
You perceive your own existence as having this massive gaping hole compared to the flawless, airbrushed lives of others online. Even though you intellectually know their showcase isn't the full picture, emotionally, the comparison still lands a blow. That flawless existence feels more real than your reality sometimes.
And this distortion gets even worse when we bring in some specific research, right, about how happiness itself is relative.
Hugely important point. We can look at work from people like the behavioral economist Dan Gilbert at Harvard. His research, and others, really underlines a key human quirk: our sense of happiness or satisfaction with achievements, even how wealthy we feel. It's less tied to absolute numbers, like your actual salary figure, and far more tied to how much you achieve or earn relative to the people you compare yourself to, your immediate reference group.
Okay, so give us an example. If I earn, say, $100,000 a year, which objectively is a very comfortable income for many,
Right.
I might feel genuinely wealthy if everyone in my immediate social circle, my neighbors, my close colleagues, makes around $50,000.
Correct. You feel relatively well off.
But if I earn that same $100,000 and all my neighbors and peers are pulling in $300,000, driving fancier cars, taking more lavish vacations, suddenly that $100 doesn't feel so great anymore. Psychologically, I feel relatively poor, even though my objective circumstances haven't changed.
That is the perfect illustration. Your brain isn't wired to assess absolute value very well. It's obsessed with rank, with status relative to the group. This ties into the hedonic treadmill idea, too. You know, how we tend to adapt to good or bad things and return to a baseline happiness level.
Yeah.
Well, social media kind of breaks that treadmill because it constantly artificially inflates the reference group and shifts the goalposts.
Ah, that's the real kicker. In your physical neighborhood, your actual workplace, you might be doing just fine.
Mm.
You might hold a decent rank based on realistic local comparisons.
But online, your reference group explodes. It's not just the 10 houses on your street or the 20 people in your department anymore. Suddenly, your neighborhood includes millions of people globally.
Including the ones who are always achieving more, traveling to more exotic places, looking effortlessly perfect, seemingly earning way more.
You end up comparing your average Tuesday to the curated peak moments of the top 0.1% of global performers and lifestyle curators. So everyone seems to be earning more, achieving more, looking better. The standard for doing well keeps getting yanked further and further out of reach. That relative happiness benchmark becomes literally impossible to meet.
Wow. And this prison, it doesn't just stay confined to how we feel about ourselves, our careers, our stuff, does it? The analysis we looked at makes it really clear that this comparison habit seriously damages our relationships too, our intimate connections.
Oh, this is a really devastating, often overlooked side effect. When we, or maybe our partners, are constantly bombarded with these idealized perfect moments from other couples online.
Like the spontaneous romantic getaways that look completely drama-free.
Exactly, or the perfectly decorated homes where kids never seem to make a mess. The apparent total absence of conflict or boredom or just domestic drudgery.
Yeah.
It sets up these profoundly unrealistic and frankly deeply unfair expectations for our own partnerships.
So we start measuring our own relationship, the real, messy, sometimes difficult, sometimes wonderful thing against someone else's edited highlight reel.
Precisely. And if our marriage doesn't look like that perfectly staged photo, or if our sex life isn't a constant stream of passionate adventures, or if we argue about taking out the trash, we start to think maybe our relationship is broken, or maybe I'm failing as a partner.
It creates this pressure cooker,
Mhm.
fosters dissatisfaction. Not necessarily because your partner did anything wrong, but because there's this huge gap between your actual evolving human relationship and the idealized illusion you're comparing it to.
Yeah, it can trigger conflict over things that are just normal, unavoidable parts of sharing a life. It implicitly demands that the 1% curated fantasy become a 100% daily reality, and no real relationship can possibly sustain that kind of psychological burden. It's built to fail.
Which brings us to maybe the most, I don't know, tragic part of this whole thing, the realization that needs to sink in for everyone listening.
Yeah.
We're all caught in this. It's like, we called it the mirror maze.
Yes. This is the critical insight that hopefully can start to cut through the illusion. That person whose filtered life you're currently envying, the one looking flawlessly happy and successful,
Yeah.
they are almost certainly a victim of the exact same trap. They are not looking at their own life through some lens of perfect ultimate satisfaction. That's not how human psychology works.
So the person on the Maldivian beach,
Yeah.
they're probably looking at their phone too.
Very likely. And maybe they're comparing their vacation, which, let's be real, probably involved a stressful airport experience, maybe a sunburn, maybe an argument to someone else who just posted about buying a bigger yacht or getting a more prestigious job offer, or whose kids seem even more perfect.
They're feeling the same anxiety about their own worth, just maybe aimed at a different target.
It's this endless M.C. Escher-like labyrinth of misery. No one ever truly wins because the target is always moving, always shifting, and the ultimate goal, that curated perfection, is fundamentally an illusion anyway.
We're all stuck in this massive hole of mirrors, comparing our genuine, messy, 100% reality to a reflection that isn't even real for the person whose reflection it supposedly is.
Recognizing that systemic flaw, that shared vulnerability, that's really the first crucial step towards breaking free.
Okay, that is a powerful, maybe slightly depressing, but necessary place to pivot from. The system, the online environment, it's almost intentionally designed to keep us comparing and feeling dissatisfied. So breaking out of that cycle, it can't be passive. It needs deliberate action.
Exactly right. If we see this as a kind of flawed operating system we're all running, then we need to install some strategic new code. We need to consciously implement some new psychological rules to override those damaging default settings.
You can't just wish comparison away. You have to actively replace that habit with something else.
You have to replace it
Yeah.
deliberately.
Yeah.
So this is where we need to get really practical and focus on the actionable strategies.
Okay, let's dive into segment 3, breaking the cycle. 3 strategic actions. Strategy 1 feels like it's all about bringing consciousness to the moment. Recognize, stop, and name the emotion.
Yes, this is basically applied cognitive restructuring, pulling that impulsive reaction out of the subconscious shadows and into the light of awareness. The second you catch yourself scrolling or you see that post or hear that news and you feel that familiar, sinking, corrosive pang, that feeling of inadequacy or jealousy,
Yeah.
you have to consciously halt right then and there, physically stop the action, put the phone down, close the browser tab, whatever it takes, interrupt the behavior.
Okay, stop the physical action.
Yeah.
But the crucial part is the mental step that comes immediately after, right?
Yeah.
You have to actually assign a name to the feeling.
Right.
Like label it.
Precisely. Treat it almost like a psychological data point. Instead of just drowning in that vague, paralyzing feeling of I suck or my life is lame, you give it a specific, almost clinical label. You say to yourself, okay, I am currently experiencing the emotion of jealousy, or my brain is now generating a feeling of inadequacy.
That creates a bit of distance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're not being the feeling, you're observing it.
Exactly. That's the critical separation. And then, step 3 of this first strategy, you apply the logical filter. You add the why. You remind yourself, okay, I am feeling this because my mind just automatically, unfairly compared my genuine, complex, 100% reality to someone else's curated, filtered 1% highlight reel.
You state the cause of the feeling, acknowledging the flawed input.
And why does this naming and rationalizing work so well? Because it literally shifts the processing center in your brain. When an emotion is just a raw gut feeling, it lives mostly in the limbic system, the older, more impulsive emotional part of the brain, and it kind of controls you automatically.
Right.
But when you consciously label it, analyze it, put words to it, you engage the prefrontal cortex, the more evolved, logical, analytical part of your brain.
So you go from being a victim of the comparison impulse to being an objective observer of a mental glitch. You see that your brain is comparing apples to, well, holographic projections of apples. And the comparison is just invalid by definition.
Yeah.
That logic gives you back conscious control.
It creates a vital buffer zone, that moment of pause, that labeling. It gives you the psychological breathing room you need to choose a different response instead of just reacting automatically, which leads us straight into strategy 2.
Okay, so if the comparison and the envy it breeds are like a psychological poison,
Yeah.
we need an antidote.
We need the most potent antidote available, applied immediately. Strategy 2, replace comparison with gratitude.
Gratitude. Why is gratitude considered the antidote here?
Because psychologically, they seem to be mutually exclusive states. When your mind is laser focused on deficiency, on lack, on what you don't have, which is the essence of envy and comparison,
Yeah.
it is basically impossible for it to simultaneously focus on abundance, on sufficiency, on what you do have, which is the essence of gratitude. It's like a mental seesaw. You can't easily be on both ends at once.
So we have to consciously, deliberately push the seesaw over to the gratitude side.
We have to force the switch.
Yeah.
And the practice needs to be immediate and concrete, not just a vague intention. So the moment you've done step 1, you've recognized, stopped, and named the envy or inadequacy.
Okay.
The prescription is physically put the phone down, turn away from whatever triggered it, and immediately pivot to a gratitude practice.
And what does that look like practically?
We need to be really specific for this to work effectively. When that envy hits, literally set the device aside, take a breath, and then either write down or just say out loud 3 specific things you are genuinely grateful for right now, in this moment, or on this particular day.
Not huge, abstract things.
Preferably not at first. Make them concrete, tangible. It could be as simple as, I'm grateful for this warm cup of coffee, or I'm grateful my headache from this morning is gone, or I'm grateful for that funny text my friend sent earlier. Really specific, small things that are undeniably present and positive in your 100% reality. Maybe even use your senses. What do you see, hear, feel right now that you appreciate?
And this isn't just about trying to cheer yourself up in the moment, is it? You mentioned brain rewiring.
Exactly. This isn't just positive thinking fluff. It's about actively redirecting your brain's reward pathways, that comparison loop. It was chasing the fleeting external reward of maybe someday having that filtered life. Gratitude forces your reward system to recognize and value what is already present, what you already own, what is good in your immediate real world.
So over time, doing this consistently actually builds new neural connections.
That's the idea. You strengthen the pathways that notice and appreciate, making that the more automatic response. And simultaneously, you weaken the pathways triggered by comparison and lack. It's a deliberate redirection of your mental energy away from chasing external, often illusory validation, and towards cultivating internal richness and contentment.
Okay, that feels really powerful and practical, which sets us up perfectly for the third strategy. This one feels like The most foundational, the one that aims to dismantle the whole external measurement system in the first place.
Absolutely. Strategy 3, define your own standard. This is about building your own internal compass, your North Star, so that all that external noise just becomes irrelevant, or at least much less compelling.
The core principle being,
You have to deeply internalize this truth. Other people's standards, their metrics of success, their curated showcases, they are simply not your map. Their lives, their achievements might occasionally offer inspiration, sure, but they can never be the definitive measure of your inherent worth or the correctness of your personal journey.
that sounds simple. But man, it's hard to do in practice. Society is constantly screaming external metrics at us, right? The job title, the salary, the house size, the follower count. How do we even begin to peel back those layers and figure out what our own standard actually is?
It requires some deep, honest, maybe uncomfortable self-reflection. It really starts by challenging the assumptions you've absorbed about what equals success or fulfillment. You have to ask yourself, seriously ask, what does real success, what does real contentment, what does a meaningful life look like to me?
Not what society says, not what my parents wanted for me, not what looks good on Instagram, but what genuinely resonates with my core values.
Precisely. What's your personal definition of a life well lived? Maybe it involves creativity or deep relationships or mastering a skill or contributing to your community or finding peace or continuous learning. It's going to be different for everyone.
And once you have a clearer sense of your own definition, that acts like a filter for all the comparison noise.
It becomes a powerful filter. If your core value is, say, having deep, authentic connections with a small group of friends and pursuing a creative passion, then seeing someone else's post about their corner office or their expensive watch, it just doesn't land the same way. It's not relevant to your game plan. It shouldn't trigger that same negative comparison because it's not the prize you're aiming for.
So when you feel that temptation to compare, you can actively check it against your own standard.
Yes, ask yourself that critical question. Okay, fast forward a year. Will I genuinely be happier, more fulfilled because I managed to acquire that person's external marker, their car, their job title, whatever? Or will I be happier because I made progress on goal A, the one I intentionally set for myself based on my values, like finishing that creative project or deepening that important relationship?
The answer is usually pretty obvious when you frame it like that. Chasing someone else's goal, even if you catch it, often feels hollow because it wasn't authentically yours to begin with.
Exactly, it doesn't resonate. So, the final, most sustainable step here is to consciously, deliberately anchor your sense of self-worth to those internal values and your effort towards them. External labels, wealth, status, looks, they're often temporary, sometimes based on luck, easily faked online, and dependent on external circumstances you can't always control.
But internal values,
Things like integrity, kindness, curiosity, perseverance, courage, mastery, patience. Those are yours. They're stable. They are cultivated through your own choices and actions, and they are entirely within your control. When your self-worth is primarily tied to living by those standards, external comparisons just lose their power. Someone else's success literally cannot diminish your integrity or your effort. Your value becomes internally generated and much more robust.
this has been such a critical deep dive. We've gone from Festinger's original 1954 theory right through to the modern digital trap of the 1% showcase life and how relative happiness works against us online, and landed on these three really concrete strategies.
Recognize a name, replace with gratitude, define your own standard.
Yeah, the synthesis feels really clear, that comparison instinct. It's human, it's deep-rooted. But our current environment has hijacked it, made it toxic, often counterproductive.
So to find real contentment, to thrive, we have to become conscious operators of our own minds. We have to actively override the system's defaults and redirect our focus inward.
So the ultimate takeaway for you, listening right now, has to be that genuine happiness, that sense of fulfillment. It's found when you're walking your own path at your own pace, eyes focused on the goals that are truly meaningful to you, not by trying to win some frantic race on somebody else's track.
The moment you define your own finish line based on your own values, all those manufactured competitors you see in the mirror maze, they start to fade away. They lose their significance.
And, connecting this outwards a bit, it reminds me of other psychological traps that prey on our fear of external judgment, like the spotlight effect.
Oh yeah, that's a great connection. The feeling that everyone is intensely focused on your mistake, your flawed outfit, that awkward thing you said.
Right, you feel like there's a giant spotlight on you.
But the reality, research shows, is that hardly anyone notices. Why? Because they are all too busy worrying about the spotlight they imagine is shining on their own flaws. Everyone's the star of their own anxious movie.
It's strangely comforting. Or thinking about the sunk cost fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've poured tons of time, energy, maybe even money or emotional commitment into something that's actually making you miserable, maybe is that compulsive scrolling habit. Or maybe it's a relationship built purely on external validation.
You don't have to keep doing it just because you've already invested so much. That's falling for sunk costs.
Exactly. You always have the power right now to choose differently, to stop investing in what drains you and redirect those precious resources, your time, your attention, toward your own internally defined goals, towards building that life based on your own standard.
Absolutely. We really hope this deep dive gives you some practical tools to navigate that constant stream of comparisons we all face every single day. Remember to focus on the incredible complexity and richness of the 100% reality you actually inhabit, not the simplistic, filtered 1% illusion you consume online.
And we want to leave you with one final, maybe provocative thought to chew on this week. Something to consider as you inevitably encounter these comparisons, online or off. Perhaps the most insidious, the most dangerous comparison of all isn't even with other people.
What is it then?
It's the comparison we make between our real, messy, work-in-progress selves and the idealized, filtered, perfect version of ourselves that we think we should be by now.
Ah, yes, that internal tyrant, that fictional perfect me who never makes mistakes, always feels motivated, always looks great. That person is just as unreal, just as unattainable as the curated showcase life of a stranger on the internet.
So maybe the real challenge, the real path to peace, is to stop comparing yourself even to that impossible ideal. Focus instead on recognizing, maybe even celebrating, the reality of who you are today, with all your genuine, complex, 100% human messiness.
Because that acceptance, combined with gentle, measured steps forward based on your own values, that's where true sustainable growth and contentment actually begin.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next week to unpack another essential topic. Until then, really focus on defining and enjoying walking your own path.